Welcome to another video on YouTube channel of tutorialspedia.com. In this channel, I'm preparing different videos on topics surrounding across different API management options, how APIs work, how API management work. And in this video, I'll be talking about API security threats, and I will discuss that how API management platforms can help you to secure your APIs and your digital assets. If we talk about API management platforms in the market, there are plenty of options available. Some of them are quite popular and well known from open source as well as closed source options. And all of these API management platforms are quite rich in terms of their features. They provide you plenty of options from the design, from analytics, from monetization, from API led connectivity, from API onboarding, and all of the aspects of API management. But when we talk about API management platforms, the first question that comes in our mind and first concern that we wish to address using these API management platform is the security. Because APIs expose your digital assets and in a good way, they are made available to your potential clients, your customers, your partners to utilize your APIs, to utilize the data that you are exposing and to make benefit out of the assets that you are providing. But at the same time, it opens a door to potential risk for the data breach, data anomalies, and all of the threats that you can think of for your digital assets. So when selecting any of the API management platform, it becomes very crucial and very important, and it's a significant decision-making approach to make sure that the API management platform that you select fulfills the required criteria of securing all of your APIs backend, and it has capabilities to meet all of the security threats. Now, a question rises that even if you don't use API management platforms, still you can secure all of your APIs by building all the required security features directly into the implementation of your API. But why we still need API management platforms to do the security aspects? So that is something I already discussed in another video where I explained that why API management platforms are important. But in this video, I'll be covering majorly that how API management platform will be helping you to meet the requirements of having secure digital journey for your digitalization of assets. The first potential threat that we often come across is denial of service attack, where some attackers try to bombard your services or APIs in such a way that the real or legitimate users are deprived of utilizing the services. Because whenever you are exposing your services which are deployed on any of the servers, maybe it's on premise, maybe it's on cloud, there is always a certain limit to which your servers and your services can handle the requests. So any of the servers or any of the services are not eligible to handle any request beyond that limit or unlimited requests. So it's very important that when you are exposing your APIs, you have some mechanism which can deal with this type of potential threats and DDoS attacks or denial of service attacks. So if we talk about API management platforms and how they deal with this type of scenarios, there are certain policies which are available that you can put on top of your exposed APIs, and these policies help you to deal with this type of situations. So you can do have policy, you can do implementation or configuration of policies related to throttling and rate limiting, where you specify that what is the rate in terms of transactions per second, or in terms of calls per second, or calls per minute, or calls per hour, or calls per day, depending on how you configure it. And you can specify that what kind of quota has to be assigned to different users based on their subscriptions, based on the packages and the plans that they are subscribed to. And in this way, you can limit the utilization or the traffic that is coming to your API. And that way, you can ensure that your servers are going to be handled and going to be utilized only to that extent to which they can actually serve the customers. And on top of that, in case of any malicious activities from the available set of policies that are provided by these API management platforms, you can always do the whitelisting and blacklisting to allow good people and to disallow the bad culprits and bad people from accessing or from you just misusing your APIs and your API assets. The second potential threat that often comes into the picture is the injection threats, which can be SQL injection or cross scripting or any kind of other related threats. So these threats are very common nowadays, and it is very important that whenever you are exposing your APIs, you are in a position to handle and to mitigate this type of issues, and you have some strong policies and strong implementation to deal with this type of scenarios. So in case of API management platforms, whenever we expose, for example, if we talk about the RESTful APIs, then we expose them with a standardized open API specifications or Swagger definitions, and that helps us to clearly define what kind of request samples or what kind of request payloads we are expecting, what are the expected parameters, and then on top of that we can have different types of input validations using validation policies like regular expression, like some specific enumerations or any type of other option that you want to specify to make sure that only legitimate data, valid data can uh, come through these APIs, and only valid request can go and pass from these validation checks and then reach to the backend servers. So validation policies are available in all of these API platforms in different formats, but in actual they serve the similar purpose. For example, you have JSON validators, you have XML validators. Similarly, you can have some other validations, like you can have your custom validation based on regular expressions, and then for the date format, for the string related validation, numeric validation. So tons of validations you can implement and you can configure to ensure that the data that arrives to the API management platform, it doesn't pass through the API gateway to the backend server if it's not a valid request. Then another very commonly known and popular threat is identity threat. So when we talk about identity threats, these threats are basically targeted to hide the identity of those who are attacking, or to mis identify themselves and use wrong identity, or do the spoofing, or do the attacks on your server, or to access your services and APIs in a malicious way. So in case of API management platforms, the best thing is that all of these threats can be handled by implementing certain policies and certain authorization and authentication mechanism at the API gateway level. So in case of API management platform, you have a API gateway, or you have a cluster of API gateways that is going to handle the traffic. So they have traffic managers, and they are going to decide the routing of the request only if the users are authenticated and they are authorized. So authentication can be based on a different type of authentication mechanism, from the simplest to the complex one. For example, you can have some basic authentication, then you can have some of the other options also available for authentication and authorization, like you have API key based authentication authorization. Then you have JWT, and in case of JWT you can decide what kind of expiry mechanism you are going to use for the Java web tokens, how API tokens are going to be refreshed, and what is the refresh mechanism that you're going to use, and then how you can do the revocation of these tokens, and on what basis you are going to do the revocations, and all these things you can do. And then on the top of that, another most sophisticated option that you can use is the OAuth. So based on OAuth 2, you can have a better way of authentication authorization. So in this way you can also have role based authentication authorization, and that way you not only decide that who can access your APIs, but also you can decide what can be accessed. For example, if a user or if a client is authenticated, even if it's authenticated, not all of the resources are meant for every user. So you have authorization based on the roles. You can define the roles, and then you can tie up your APIs, API operations, API bundles to those roles, and decide that if a user belongs to a particular role, he or she can access some specific APIs, and if a user is bound to another role, then the APIs and API operations that he or she is allowed to access are different. So all these things you can easily and very conveniently do using the API management platforms. Then the next thing that is a pretty common thing is that you can ensure the data transmission over the network is secure when you are using API management platforms. In general, also whenever we are implementing any of the APIs, we always ensure that instead of plain HTTP, we use HTTPS. So in case of API management platform, you have data encryption with TLS, and you can use latest TLS versions, and those are being supported by all of these API management platforms. And the good thing is that even if your backend services are based on HTTP, which are inside your network, and if you want to expose to the outer world on the secure platform in a secure manner, so that all of the data that comes in over the network is in a encrypted, in a hashed manner, then you can expose your HTTP services on the HTTPS just by implementing and configuring some of the policies or some of the other settings at your API management platform when onboarding your API or when designing and documenting your APIs. So this really helps you to decide, and there are in some of the API management platforms there are simple checkboxes that can solve all of these problems and help you to decide if you want to expose some API on HTTP or HTTPS or both of them, or how you are going to do deal with this type of situations. Then on top of that, you can also decide like whenever there is API key mechanism being used for authentication and authorization, do you want to pass on those API keys or any other some such sensitive data to the backend servers or not to the other APIs when you are calling those APIs. So all these things you can very conveniently and seamlessly define and decide whenever you are using some of these sophisticated API management platforms. And last but not least, the biggest purpose of all of these security measures is to ensure that the backend is protected, because backend servers, including the data servers or databases, they contain all of the important data, all of the critical data and sensitive data that you want to protect at all costs, even if you are exposing some of that data to legitimate users through the APIs that you are exposing. So in this case, you whenever you have API management platform on top of your backend implementations, then you have a kind of active security guard at the door. And when you have an active security guard standing at your door, then you are quite comfortable that no intruders can jump in, and they cannot come inside and steal any of the precious things from within your boundary. So in a similar way, whenever you have all of the policies rightly and tightly implemented and configured at the API management platform level, then the backend becomes quite secure significantly from the external as well as potential internal attacks. And in this case, you ensure using the routing policies, using all of the policies about the throttling, rate limiting, to and other policies for with the whitelisting and blacklisting mechanism, authentication and authorization, all of the things that we have just discussed in this video. So by implementing all those policies, you ensure that there is no routing of any unwanted traffic towards the backend. So in this way, you are not only securing and safeguarding the data from the backend, but also you are ensuring that the backend servers are not overloaded, because only legitimate traffic is going to be sent to the backend servers, and any of the irrelevant, unnecessary, or stupid type of traffic is going to be simply discarded and thrown away at your API gateway level. So in this way, you ensure that the backend servers are protected. Another thing on top of this is that all of these API management platforms, when I say all of these, that means all of the open source as well as the proprietary or commercial offerings from the API management world. So most of them, I should say, they provide you even some other features on top of this, like monitoring is one of the features, and analytics is a feature that they provide you, using which you can always have a look at what is happening, the entire ecosystem of your APIs, and how APIs are being used, how customers are, your subscribers are using them, how they are actually utilizing the services, what kind of tweakings need to be done, what kind of security measures on top of the existing measures need to be taken. and how you are going to deal with any of the potential threats that you can identify based on the analytics. Because once you have analytics platform enabled and you have strong analytics, then you can always slice and dice from the data available on your analytics, and then based on this you can have your own custom decision making and certain rules you can use to deal with this type of potential threats on top of the existing things. Another good thing about all of these analytics, sorry, all of these API management platforms is that whenever there are any new potential security vulnerabilities identified at the global level, all of these platforms are well equipped and well updated to mitigate and to resolve and to deal with those type of potential threats, to make sure that all of these platforms are rightly up to date and they are updated to the latest security patches. So all these things just highlight the significance of utilizing and using API management platforms. So in your organization, if you have some APIs and digital assets exposed, just think of this from the security perspective, other than the other features, that how significant, how important, and how crucial it is to ensure that you have API management platforms utilized, and the power of these platforms is being rightly added into the digital journey of your organization. So that's it from this video. You can always watch other videos in the same playlist about APIs and API managements and platforms in general. That those videos will also be helpful for you. If you have any question, you can write in the comment section. And if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Thank you very much.